Most people are living on the smallest fraction of what they're capable of, not because life gave them too little, but because they asked for far too little in return. Today, that changes. Good evening, friend. Wherever you are right now, whether you're sitting in your car at the end of a long day, resting in a quiet room, or listening while the world hums along around you, I want you to stop for just a moment. Because what I'm about to share with you is something I believe, with every conviction I carry, that you already know, deep down, in that quiet place inside you that rarely gets a chance to speak. You were not born to get by. Say that to yourself. Let it land. Because somewhere between childhood, when your imagination ran wild and your dreams had no ceiling, and today a quiet resignation crept in. Not all at once, never all at once. It came in small surrenders. A dream postponed, an ambition softened, a bold thought traded for a safer, smaller one. And over time, you may have arrived at a life that is acceptable without ever asking whether it is yours. That is what I want to talk to you about tonight. There is a word I want you to hold on to throughout our time together. That word is demand. Not demand as in aggression. Not demanding of others, or of fate, or of some distant fortune you feel owed. No, I mean the quiet, firm, unshakable demand you place upon yourself. The kind that says, I will not leave this earth having only grazed the surface of what I was capable of. Most men and women never make that demand. They negotiate. They compromise before the battle has even begun. They look at what others around them are doing, measure themselves against that modest yardstick, and conclude they are doing just fine. And perhaps by that measure they are. But that is the wrong measure entirely. Here is a truth that has stood the test of every generation before ours, and will outlast every generation to come. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the demands you make of yourself. Read it again. Absorb it. Because it does not say your life is determined by your circumstances, your background, your education, the city you were born in, or the family you came from. It says the quality of your life is determined by the standard you hold yourself to privately, consistently, and without exception. This is not a comfortable idea. Comfort, after all, is the great enemy of growth. And we live in a time that worships comfort above almost everything else. We are told to relax, to lower our stress, to accept, to settle. And while rest has its rightful place, rest in service of restoration, comfort as a destination is a quiet tragedy. The man who is too comfortable never discovers what he was made of. The woman who settles for ease never learns the depth of her own strength. Let me tell you something about potential. About yours specifically. Your potential is not a fixed quantity. It is not a jar that was filled at birth to a certain level and can hold no more. It is, in fact, something that expands in proportion to how much you use it. The more you demand of it, the more it delivers. The less you ask, the smaller it becomes, not because it shrank, but because you stopped reaching for it. William James, one of the greatest minds this country has ever produced, once said that the average person lives far inside their possible life. Far inside, not at the edge of it, not even halfway to it. Far inside it, tucked away, safe, unexplored. Now I want you to imagine, just for a moment, what the edge of your possible life looks like. Not someone else's life. Not the life you see celebrated on a screen, your life. The version of you that made the demand, that got up earlier, worked with more intention, refused to quit when the middle of the road got muddy. What does that person look like? What do they accomplish? Who do they become? That person is not a fantasy. That person is a possibility, and the only thing standing between you and that possibility is the decision to demand it. Now, I am not here to sell you a shortcut. There are no shortcuts worth taking on this road. What I am here to tell you is that the path to a life of meaning, of real contribution, of genuine fulfillment, that path is simpler than you've been led to believe. It begins with a single fundamental shift in how you see yourself. Most people move through their days reacting. The alarm sounds and they react. The news disturbs and they react. The economy shifts and they react. Their whole lives are shaped by the outside world pressing in, and they push back just enough to stay upright, never quite getting ahead, never quite in command. The person who demands their life does something different. They decide before the day begins what kind of person they will be in it. They set a standard, not a wish, not a hope, a standard, and they hold to it whether the day is easy or difficult, whether anyone is watching or no one is. That is discipline. And discipline, friend, is simply the bridge between the life you have and the life you are capable of. There is a central truth I want to leave at the very core of our conversation tonight. A single sentence that I believe contains within it the seed of everything a person needs to transform their life. Here it is. You don't get in life what you want. You get in life what you are, and you become what you consistently demand of yourself. Read it slowly. Let it work on you. Because it answers the oldest human question. Why do some people flourish while others, equally talented, equally intelligent, equally deserving, do not? The answer is not luck. The answer is not privilege, though that exists and matters. The deeper answer, the one that lives in your own hands, is standard. What do you require of yourself each day? What do you refuse to accept from yourself? What line have you drawn and sworn not to cross? The people who lead remarkable lives are not always the brightest. They are not always the most gifted. But they are, almost without exception, the ones who made a quiet decision, sometimes in a moment of great pain, sometimes in a moment of great clarity, that they would no longer live below what they were capable of. So let me speak plainly about what this looks like in practice, because wisdom without application is just beautiful noise. First, define what you want with precision. Not, I want more money, or I want to be happy. Those are wishes. Define it specifically. What does your ideal day look like? What work are you doing? What relationships surround you? What does your character look like at its best? Write it. Speak it. Make it real enough to reach for. Second, raise your daily standard by 1 degree. Not 10 degrees 1. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Read 1 chapter more. Do the task you've been postponing. Consistency in small demands builds the muscle for larger ones. Third, stop measuring yourself against those who are settling. This is perhaps the subtlest trap of all. When everyone around us is merely getting by feels like success. Raise your eyes. Find the standard set by the best version of yourself and measure against that. Fourth, accept full responsibility without drama. Not blame, not guilt. Responsibility. The calm, clear-eyed acknowledgement that your life, from this moment forward, is something you are actively building. That is power. That is the beginning of everything. The first act today, not Monday, not the first of next month, not when the conditions are perfect, because they never will be. Today, 1 deliberate step, 1 honest hour, 1 decision made from the best of yourself rather than the least of yourself. I have spoken to people across many years who look back on their lives with a certain sadness, not because of what happened to them, but because of what they never attempted. Because of the life they could see clearly in their minds, glimmering just beyond where they dared to reach. Don't be that person. You have been given something extraordinary: a mind that can think, plan, and grow, a will that can be strengthened, a character that can be shaped, a life that is still, right now, in this very moment, full of possibility. But possibility, left untouched, does not wait forever. Each day you postpone the demand, the distance between you and your potential grows a little wider. And conversely, each day you make the demand, that distance narrows. The life you were meant to live draws closer. I want to begin tonight with something that most people will never say out loud, not to their friends, not to their families, and certainly not to themselves. But I believe if you are honest, truly honest, in the quiet of this moment, you will recognize it the instant I say it. Something in you has gone still, not tired, not busy, still, like a river that somewhere, somehow stopped moving and became a pond, calm on the surface, undisturbed, and to anyone passing by perfectly fine. But you know, don't you, that still water does not go anywhere. It simply sits, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, it begins to stagnate. That stillness, that quiet settling, did not happen overnight. It never does. It came in stages so gradual you barely noticed each one. A dream you stopped mentioning because people looked at you sideways when you did. A goal you quietly moved further down the calendar until the calendar ran out of pages. A version of yourself you used to believe in that you slowly, almost tenderly, let go of. Not with a dramatic goodbye, just with silence. And now here you are, living a life that works, a life that functions, a life that, by every reasonable measure, is acceptable. And that word, acceptable, may be the most dangerous word in the English language. Because acceptable is not the same as alive. Acceptable is not the same as purposeful. Acceptable is simply what happens when a person stops making demands of themselves and starts making peace with less. Here is what I want you to understand, and I mean truly understand, not just hear, but carry with you. Settling is not something that happens to you. It is something you choose, quietly, repeatedly, and almost always without realizing it. And the moment you understand that, the moment that truth lands fully, something shifts. Because if settling is a choice, then so is rising. The same quiet decision that led you here can lead you somewhere else entirely. The same daily moment where you once chose comfort can become the moment you choose growth. The same morning where you once accepted less can become the morning you demand more. This is not about grand gestures. It is not about burning your life to the ground and rebuilding from rubble. It is far simpler and far more powerful than that. It is about recognizing that every single day, in ways both large and small, you are either choosing to settle or choosing to rise. There is no neutral ground. Standing still in a life meant for forward motion is itself a choice, and it is the choice to fall behind. You are not a passenger in your own story. You are the author. And the next chapter, the one that reflects the full weight of what you are truly capable of, begins the moment you decide that acceptable is no longer enough. That moment can be right now. Choose to rise. Let me ask you something tonight that I suspect you have never been asked quite this directly. When was the last time you truly surprised yourself? Not a small surprise, not finding an extra hour in your day or stumbling onto a good idea by accident. I mean the kind of surprise that stops you cold. The moment you did something you genuinely did not believe you were capable of. The moment you pushed past what felt like your ceiling and discovered there was no ceiling at all, just more room, more capacity, more of you than you had ever been willing to reach for. If you are sitting quietly with that question and the answer is coming slowly, or not coming at all, then what I am about to share with you tonight matters more than perhaps anything else you will hear this week. Most people carry a quiet, unexamined belief that runs beneath everything they do. It operates like a current under still water, invisible, but powerful enough to determine the direction of everything above it. And that belief sounds something like this: I am what I am. I have what I have. And the abilities I was born with are roughly the abilities I will die with. It sounds reasonable. It even sounds humble. But it is one of the most limiting ideas a human being can carry through a lifetime, because it is simply not true. Here is what we now understand with absolute clarity, confirmed not just by philosophy and lived experience, but by science itself. The human mind does not come fully assembled at birth, wrapped and waiting to be opened like a gift on a winter morning. It is not a fixed quantity. It is not a predetermined measure of talent distributed unequally at birth, beyond which no man or woman can grow. It is instead a living, dynamic, expanding capacity, one that grows in direct proportion to the demands placed upon it. Think about that carefully. Your potential is not waiting inside you to be discovered. It is waiting to be developed. And development, real development, does not come from waiting, wishing, or wondering. It comes from one thing, and one thing only: discipline. Not the harsh, punishing kind that breaks a person down, but the steady, faithful, daily kind that builds a person up. The kind that shows up on the mornings when motivation has slept in. The kind that does the work when the work is hard and the results are not yet visible. The kind that says, quietly, firmly, without drama, I will do this today because the person I am becoming requires it of me. This is the great secret that separates those who merely have potential from those who actually use it. Because potential alone has never built a single thing. Potential without practice is like a seed left sitting on a shelf. It contains everything necessary for extraordinary growth: the design, the intelligence, the possibility, but without soil, without water, without the daily conditions required for it to take root, it simply remains what it always was: a possibility, unrealized. And here is where the relief enters, quietly, like morning light through a window. If your potential is not a gift but a practice, then it does not matter where you started. It does not matter what you were told about yourself growing up, what grades you earned, what opportunities passed you by, or how many years you feel you may have lost to lesser living. None of that determines what is still available to you, because what is available to you is determined not by your past, but by what you are willing to practice from this day forward. Every master was once a beginner who simply refused to stop practicing. Every person of remarkable achievement once stood exactly where you are standing now, at the edge of their known self, looking out at the unknown, deciding whether to step forward or step back. The discipline to step forward every day In even the smallest way, that is the practice. That is the whole of it. So tonight, I ask you not to search for your potential as though it were buried treasure waiting to be found. Instead, I ask you to build it deliberately, patiently, and without apology, one disciplined day at a time. Because the person you are fully capable of becoming is not hiding from you. They are simply waiting for you to begin, and you can begin right now. I want you to consider something tonight that may feel uncomfortable at first. Not because it is cruel, but because it is true. And truth, even when it stings slightly upon arrival, has a way of setting a person free once it has been fully received. Here it is. The life you are living right now, its size, its quality, its direction, its daily texture, is an almost perfect reflection of the thoughts you have been thinking most consistently. Not occasionally, not in your best moments, but most consistently, day after day, week after week, year after year. That is not a punishment. That is not a verdict on your worth as a human being, but it is a law as reliable and as indifferent as gravity, and it has been operating in your life, whether you were aware of it or not. And here is what makes it quietly unsettling for most people. They look at their lives and they see the results, the income, the relationships, the opportunities that came and went, the dreams that never quite took shape, and they look outward for the explanation. The economy, the timing, the people who did or did not help them, the circumstances that were never quite right. And while the outside world certainly plays its role, the deeper truth, the one most people spend an entire lifetime avoiding, is that the primary architect of an average life is not bad luck. It is average thinking, quietly repeated until it becomes a way of seeing the world. Now let me be careful here, because I do not say this to assign blame. Blame is not useful to us tonight. What is useful is understanding. And what I want you to understand is this: average thinking does not announce itself. It does not arrive wearing a sign. It disguises itself as realism. It calls itself practicality. It wraps itself in the language of wisdom. I'm just being sensible. I'm just keeping my expectations reasonable. I'm just being realistic about what's possible for someone like me. And that last phrase, someone like me, may be the most powerful limiter a person can carry. Because the moment you define what is possible based on what you have already seen, already done, already become, you have drawn a circle around your future and called it fate. But it is not fate. It has never been fate. It is a habit of mind. And habits, even the deepest, most long-standing ones, can be replaced. Here is what the great thinkers, the great achievers, the men and women across history who built lives of genuine meaning and contribution all understood: the outer world is simply a delayed reflection of the inner one. Change what happens consistently inside, the beliefs, the expectations, the quiet assumptions you carry about yourself and what you deserve, and the outside world, given time and deliberate action, will begin to reflect something entirely different. This is not mysticism. This is not wishful thinking dressed in philosophical clothing. It is the straightforward, observable truth that every person who has ever pulled themselves from limitation to contribution has lived out in practice. They did not wait for their circumstances to improve before improving their thinking. They improved their thinking first, and their circumstances followed. So what does average thinking actually look like in daily life? It looks like this. It focuses on what is missing rather than what is possible. It rehearses past failures more than it envisions future success. It asks, what if this goes wrong, far more often than it asks, what if this goes exactly right? It measures ambition against the average of those around it, rather than against the standard of its own deepest capability. And expanded thinking, the kind that produces an uncommon life, simply does the opposite, consistently, patiently, without requiring perfect conditions to begin. And this is where something opens up, where the whole picture changes. Because if average thinking is a pattern, and it is, then it is also a pattern that can be interrupted. Today, not after some grand transformation, not after years of study or a sudden flash of inspiration. Right now, in the next hour, you can begin thinking at a slightly higher level than you did yesterday. You can ask a better question. You can challenge one assumption you have been carrying unchallenged. You can hold your vision of what is possible for your life just a little longer before doubt rushes in to replace it. That is how it begins. Not with a revolution, with a decision, followed by another decision, followed by another. Each one pulling your thinking fractionally higher than it was before. The average life is not your destiny, friend. It never was. It was simply the natural result of a pattern you were never fully shown how to break. Now you see it, and the moment you truly see a pattern, the moment you hold it up to the light and recognize it for exactly what it is, it loses its power over you. Your thinking is not fixed, your ceiling is not sealed, and the life that has felt ordinary up until now is not a life sentence. It is simply a starting point, one you are now free to think your way beyond. Start thinking differently, starting tonight. There is a question I want to place before you tonight, not a complicated question, not one that requires years of study or a philosopher's vocabulary to understand, but one that, if you sit with it honestly, truly honestly, has the power to rearrange the way you see everything that has happened in your life up until this moment. Here it is. What have you been asking of yourself? Not what have you been hoping for. Not what have you been wishing would come your way, or waiting to arrive when the timing finally felt right, or expecting the world to eventually recognize and reward in you. I mean, what have you been requiring firmly, consistently, without negotiation, of the person you see in the mirror each morning? Because here is what I have come to know with absolute certainty, after years of studying human achievement and human struggle in equal measure. The world is not withholding from you. Life is not conspiring against you. Opportunity is not hiding in places you cannot reach. The gap, the very real, very painful gap between where most people are and where they genuinely long to be, almost never originates out there in the world. It originates in here, in the standard a person sets for themselves before the day begins. And most people, without ever making a conscious decision to do so, have set that standard remarkably low. Now, I want to be precise about what I mean, because this is not about self-criticism, and it is certainly not about the kind of relentless, joyless pressure that grinds a person down rather than lifting them up. What I am talking about is something quieter than that. Something more fundamental. I am talking about the inner requirement, the private, unspoken contract you hold with yourself about what you will and will not accept from your own effort, your own thinking, your own daily conduct. Most people have never written that contract. They have never sat down and decided, with genuine seriousness, what they require of themselves. And so life writes the contract for them, and life left to its own devices is not particularly ambitious on your behalf. Here is the principle I want you to carry from tonight forward, and I want you to carry it the way you carry your own name, as something inseparable from who you are. Demand precedes delivery. In every area of human life, in work, in character, in relationships, in personal growth, what you ultimately receive is shaped first and most powerfully by what you first require of yourself. The world, in a very real sense, takes its cue from you. It observes the standard you hold. It responds to the seriousness with which you pursue your own becoming. And it delivers with remarkable consistency something very close to what you have been silently signaling you expect. Expect little of yourself, and the world confirms that expectation with quiet efficiency. Require much of yourself, not someday, not in theory, but in the actual daily choices you make from morning to evening, and the world begins, sometimes slowly but always surely, to reflect that requirement back to you in the form of results. This is not a promise of instant reward. Growth never works on an instant schedule, but it is a principle as reliable as any in nature. The farmer who prepares his soil thoroughly, plants with intention, and tends his field with daily discipline does not harvest on the first morning, but he harvests. Always he harvests. While the man who prepared nothing, planted carelessly, and tended nothing, stands in an empty field at season's end, wondering why the harvest never came. The harvest always follows the preparation. Delivery always follows demand. So what does it look like, practically, in the fabric of an ordinary day, to require greatness of yourself before the world delivers it? It looks like this. It looks like finishing what you start, even when the middle of it is harder than the beginning promised. It looks like bringing your full attention to the work in front of you rather than the distracted, partial effort that gets the task done but leaves no mark of excellence upon it. It looks like holding yourself to the answer, "Oh, me absolute best," every time the question, "Is this good enough?" arises, and being honest about the difference between the two. It looks like treating your own time as the precious, irreplaceable resource that it is. It looks like the private decision, made and remade each morning, that today you will be slightly more than you were yesterday, in discipline, in focus, in the quality of what you give to your work and to the people around you. None of this is heroic in the dramatic sense. But all of it, accumulated over weeks and months and years, produces something that looks very much like a hero's life from the outside, because it is a life built entirely from the inside out. And here is what that means for you, right now, in this moment. You do not need the world to change before you begin. You do not need better circumstances, a warmer reception, a clearer path, or a more convenient season. You need only to raise, by one honest degree, what you require of yourself beginning tomorrow morning. That single shift in your inner standard will set in motion a chain of events that no outside force could have initiated on your behalf. The world is ready to deliver, friend. It is simply waiting on your demand. Place it, firmly. Today, I want to speak to you tonight about something that has quietly troubled more intelligent, capable, genuinely good people than perhaps any other single question in human experience. It has sent men and women on long journeys, literal and philosophical. It has filled libraries, inspired religions, and kept thoughtful minds awake long past midnight staring at ceilings that offered no answers. That question is this: what am I here for? And if you have ever asked it, if you have ever sat in a rare, honest moment, and felt the uncomfortable weight of not quite knowing the answer, then I want you to know something before we go any further tonight. That feeling is not a flaw. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you, that you missed a signal everyone else received, or that your life is somehow less shaped by meaning than the lives of those around you who appear more certain of their direction. That feeling is simply the result of a misunderstanding, a widespread, deeply embedded, quietly destructive misunderstanding about the nature of purpose itself. And that misunderstanding sounds like this: that purpose is something you find. We have been told this story in 100 different forms. That somewhere out there, in the right career, the right relationship, the right moment of sudden clarity, your purpose is waiting to be discovered. Like a buried artifact, like a message in a bottle drifting toward you on a tide you simply need to be patient enough to wait for. And so people wait. They search. They try one thing, abandon it, try another. They read every book that promises to reveal the secret. They attend the seminars, they take the personality assessments. They look and look and look, and many of them are still looking decades later, still waiting for that singular moment of divine revelation that will finally tell them what they were made for. But here is the truth that changes everything, the truth that the most purposeful men and women in history lived by, even if they never articulated it in quite these words. Purpose is not a destination you arrive at. It is a structure you build, deliberately, patiently. One action, one commitment, one chosen direction at a time. It does not arrive before the work. It emerges through it. Think carefully about every person you have ever admired for the depth and clarity of their purpose. The ones who seem to move through life with direction, conviction, and a sense of genuine meaning behind everything they did. I can tell you with confidence that not one of them woke up one morning with purpose fully formed and waiting on the pillow beside them. Every single one of them built it through years of deliberate effort, through the accumulation of skills practiced until they became mastery, through commitments honored, even when honoring them was inconvenient, through a chosen direction pursued with enough consistency that eventually the direction and the person became inseparable. That is how purpose is made, not discovered. Made, and the making of it follows a pattern as reliable as any in nature. It begins not with certainty, because certainty almost never comes first, but with a decision to move, to begin, to take the first brick and place it, even if you cannot yet see the shape of the building it will eventually become. Because here is what deliberate action does that waiting never can. It generates information. It reveals capacity you did not know you possessed. It builds confidence not through affirmation but through evidence, the real, lived, undeniable evidence of what you are capable of when you commit to something and follow through. And with each brick laid, each skill developed, each challenge met, each morning you showed up when you could have easily stayed still, the structure of your purpose becomes more visible, more solid, more unmistakably yours. This is why the person who is waiting to feel purposeful before they begin will almost certainly wait forever. The feeling follows the action. It has always followed the action. Meaning is not the spark that starts the fire, it is the warmth that builds as the fire grows. So what does this mean for you, practically, in the life you are living right now? It means you do not need to have it all figured out before you begin. You do not need a complete blueprint, a fully formed vision, or an ironclad certainty about where the road ultimately leads. You need only to identify the direction that calls to you most honestly, the work that engages you most fully, the contribution that feels most aligned with the person you are choosing to become, and begin moving toward it with discipline and consistency. Start building, one brick, one day, one deliberate act of forward motion. Because every brick you lay makes the next one easier to place. Every commitment honored strengthens the foundation beneath your feet. And every morning you choose action over waiting, you are not just doing work, you are constructing the architecture of a purposeful life. The life of meaning you have been searching for, friend, is not hidden somewhere beyond your reach. It is being built, brick by brick, every time you choose to act with intention rather than wait with hope. You already have the first brick in your hand. All that remains is to place it. Tonight I want to have the kind of conversation that most people never get to have, not because the opportunity never presents itself, but because honesty of this particular kind requires a certain courage that is, I'm afraid, rather uncommon. It requires a person to sit still, set aside every defense they have carefully constructed over the years, and look clearly at something they have been, perhaps for a very long time, choosing not to see. I want to talk to you about the stories you tell yourself, not the stories you tell others. Those are easy enough to examine. I mean the private ones, the ones that run quietly in the background of your mind like a current beneath a river's surface. The ones that have become so familiar, so well rehearsed, so thoroughly woven into the fabric of how you see yourself and your circumstances that they no longer feel like stories at all. They feel like facts. And that, precisely that, is where the trouble lies. Because here is something I have observed across a lifetime of studying human nature, human achievement, and the vast, largely unexplored territory that lies between where people are and where they are genuinely capable of going. The single most reliable barrier between a person and the fullest expression of their potential is almost never what it appears to be on the surface. It is rarely the economy, though the economy has its seasons. It is rarely the absence of opportunity, though opportunity is admittedly not distributed with perfect fairness. It is rarely a lack of talent, intelligence, or raw capability, because the world is filled, absolutely filled, with talented and intelligent people living lives far smaller than their abilities warrant. The most reliable barrier is something quieter, closer, and far more personal than any of those things. It is the excuse that has been repeated so many times it has hardened into a belief. Now I want to be careful here, because I am not speaking carelessly. I understand that life places real obstacles before real people, and I have no interest in dismissing genuine hardship with a wave of philosophical optimism. Difficulty is real. Setbacks are real. There are circumstances that make the road harder for some than for others, and that truth deserves to be honored. But here is what is equally true, and what I believe deserves equal honoring. Within every set of circumstances, including the most challenging ones, there exists a choice. Not always a comfortable choice, not always an obvious one, but a choice nonetheless, the choice of how to respond, the choice of what to do with what remains available, the choice of whether to let the hardness of the road determine the quality of the journey, or to let the quality of your character determine it instead. And an excuse, however reasonable it sounds, however sympathetically others might receive it, is simply the moment that choice is surrendered. Here is what excuses do that we rarely acknowledge plainly. They do not merely delay progress. They do something far more damaging than that. They construct, over time, a false ceiling, an artificial limit on what a person believes is possible for them specifically. And once that ceiling is in place, once a person has convinced themselves thoroughly enough that their limitations are external rather than internal, they stop reaching. Not dramatically, not with any conscious declaration of defeat. They simply stop reaching and call it wisdom. But it is not wisdom, it is architecture. The architecture of a smaller life, built brick by brick from accumulated justifications. And here is the most important thing I want you to hear tonight, the thing that I hope stays with you long after this broadcast has ended and the quiet of the evening has settled back in around you. The person you are capable of becoming has not gone anywhere. They have not expired. They have not been canceled by the years that have passed, or the opportunities that were missed, or the mistakes that were made along the way. That person, the fuller, more deliberate, more realized version of you, is standing on the other side of the very excuses you have been using as shelter, waiting with a patience that is almost humbling, waiting not with judgment, but with a simple, steady readiness to emerge the moment you decide to stop explaining why you cannot and start demonstrating that you can. Because that is all it takes. Not a perfect plan, not ideal circumstances, not the resolution of every difficulty currently present in your life, just the decision made cleanly, made honestly, made today, to stop handing your future over to your justifications and start building it with your actions instead. Every excuse you release creates space for something real to grow in its place. Every morning you choose forward motion over comfortable stagnation, the ceiling rises, the room expands. The person you were always capable of becoming draws one day closer to the person you actually are. This is not a small thing, friend. This is the whole thing. Because at the end of a life, the distance that haunts a person most is not the distance between where they started and where they arrived. It is the distance between where they arrived and where they knew, quietly, honestly, in that deep place where excuses have no authority, they were truly capable of going. Close that distance. Not someday. Not when the conditions improve or the obstacles clear or the timing finally feels right. Beginning today. Beginning now. Beginning with the very next choice you make. The person you are meant to become is not a distant dream, friend. They are simply waiting on the other side of the last excuse you will ever need to make. Let them through. So here is what I am asking of you tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Before you sleep, take out a piece of paper or open a blank page and write down one honest answer to this question. What have I been tolerating in my life that I no longer have the right to accept? Then write down one specific action you will take tomorrow morning, not someday, tomorrow morning, that reflects the person you are choosing to become. Pin it somewhere you will see it when you wake. And when that alarm sounds, remember this moment. Remember that you made a quiet decision in the stillness of an ordinary evening to stop getting by, and to start demanding the life that was always waiting for you. You were not born to get by, friend. You were born to rise. Now go do it. Good night and great tomorrow.